Hello, 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 everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our Summer Student Showcase. My name is Crystal Tribbett and my pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am speaking to you today from the campus of UC Irvine, which sits on the territories of the Achatchman and Tongva peoples, past, present, and future. At UCI, I serve as the curator for Orange County Regional History, and I am also a member of the Black Panther Party Oakland Community School Community Archives Activism and Storytelling Research Cluster team. The BPOCS Research Cluster was formed in spring 2021 to advance research, teaching, and learning about the Black Panther Party survival programs through public programs, exhibits, community archives, and digital project development towards the release of publications and a film documentary about the Oakland Community School. To support this mission, to date, the research cluster has hired 14 UCI graduate and undergraduate students, as well as trained and directed the archival work of an additional 10 UCI undergraduate interns in classroom settings and internships. Other members of the BPOCS team are Tatiana Bryant, Professor Disha Deshawn, Angela LeBlanc-Ernest, who is the director of the OCS project, Professor Rasul Miller, and Professor Judy Wu. In the interest of time, I won't be able to offer in-depth biographies for this group, but I encourage you to visit the OCS project website, which is www.theocsproject.org. And there's a / there. Thank you, many thanks to the work of students, the leadership team. I'm really tongue-tied this afternoon. And sponsors, and our sponsors are the OCS Project, UCI Humanities Center, and UCI Libraries. The research cluster has embarked on a number of exciting initiatives, including summer and academic year internships, in their own words, the OCS Project podcast, Art Power Community, a student-curated traveling photo exhibit, panel presentations, and film and media studies course collaborations. So that was the overview about the BPOCS Research Cluster, and I think it's time for us to get started. We are using a webinar format for our conversation today. So our summer student fellows will talk about their research experiences and use an example of their work as reflection, and that will be followed by a Q&A with the audience. So please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A feature of the Zoom throughout the program. I am now going to turn us over to Angela to introduce everyone for this afternoon.
Thank you, Crystal. Good afternoon, everyone. Today, it is my honor to introduce our 2022 Summer Fellows, Kasaya Jeffries, Bree Smiley, Kay Regalado, and Ali Chak. All are UC Irvine students who spent 10 weeks working closely with the cluster co-leaders to research and archive Oakland Community School history. They learned to use the existing Airtable database, which houses OCS archival documents. They used Otter for transcribing audio and video. They were exposed to documentary filmmaking techniques and working on creating shot logs of OCS interviews, and they even participated in a seminar on digital humanities. They designed presentations and moderated discussions during our weekly seminars, and they journaled weekly. Additionally, they engaged our guest lecturers and walked away from the summer more versed in the history of the Oakland Community School than they ever imagined they would be. The OCS project currently is designing a digital interactive history platform that I've named the Digital Yearbook Project. So the interns wouldn't feel that their research experience was scattered. And because I wanted them to have a collective as well as an individual research experience, I decided to have the fellows work on the same academic year of the yearbook project, and that would have been 1976 to 1977. I assigned each an event that will be included in a visual timeline. They had to conduct research in newspapers, transcribe audio recordings related to their event, conduct research in a photo collection that contained photos related to their event, and then make sense of it all in a 10-week period for 10 hours a week. And now I turn it over to the summer interns who will introduce themselves and share their varied perspectives on their summer fellowship experiences. Kasaya, we can begin with you.
Okay, perfect. Hello, everyone. My name is Kasaya Elzina Jeffries, and I am a second-year PhD student at UC Irvine in the Culture and Theory program with a graduate emphasis in feminist studies. This summer, I had the pleasure of working with the Oakland Community School Project as a Humanities Out There graduate public fellow. When applying for the fellowship, I was most excited to learn about the community work that the Black Panther Party performed through the Oakland Community School and other survival programs. I also looked forward to contributing to meaningful research that challenged public conceptions of the party and documented its legacy. Beyond my love and admiration for the party's politics, I do see the work of the Black Panther Party playing a significant role in the research I hope to conduct and the courses I hope to teach. I believed working with the OCS project would assist me in learning more about the politics and intentions of the party, which would clarify my future research and career goals. Further, it has always been important to me to research alongside my community and to be responsible and accountable to them. I believe that working with the OCS project would clarify what that relationship might look like. Finally, in gaining knowledge and clarity through contributing to the OCS project, I hope to gain confidence in myself as a scholar and in my research. Over the summer, I learned so much, but there are 3 things that are essential to my development as a scholar. First, I learned numerous digital humanities methods, which I plan to utilize in future research projects. Secondly, I learned more about community archives, including one in my neighborhood, Southern California Library. I've long been frustrated with narratives built in traditional archives and the voices they leave out. My research has examined how these archival histories shape knowledge and power, especially when looking for revolutionary voices and Black voices in general. Scholars have been faced with addressing the gap between what is there and what we feel should be there. Community archives and legitimizing other forms of documentation are valuable in these pursuits. Finally, the BPP motto of Educate to Liberate has stuck with me and provided clarification on my position within academia. Rather than feeling as though my work is reifying the violence of the university, I can look at the liberatory power of education, of teaching people how to think, not what to think, of equipping students with tools to challenge their understandings of the world and work to change it. There isn't a divide between theory and practice. Theory is practice and practice is theory, and both are necessary for change. After working with the OCS project, I want you all to know that the Panthers are still alive, telling their stories and working in and with their communities. Additionally, stories and oral histories, like those we transcribed, are powerful tools for understanding the past and its impact on the present. To see someone remembering, to hear their voice crack as they try to hold back emotion, to watch their eyes light up as they recognize a photo, all of these hold meaning. Finally, public-facing research is very important, especially when those you are researching are still alive. These Panthers want to see their history told. They also want to remember, but university paywalls and academic jargon have prevented them from accessing their own history. If we want OCS to serve as a model for education and to challenge the way that the party has been demonized in history, we have to speak to the public and share their stories. The event that I was assigned to research for the Digital Yearbook Project was a student presentation at the Western Regional Meeting of Black Engineers and Scientists. The theme of the conference was Using Technology for Black Development. The conference spanned over 3 days at the Holiday Inn Hotel in Emeryville, California. Students presented on October 15, 1976, the day after Erica Huggins, the director of OCS, spoke about OCS's approach to STEM education and creative STEM educational models for Black and marginalized students. On the slide, I've selected 2 photographs taken of the students' presentation by photographer Donald Cunningham. The student with the afro on the left is Alicia Keys. In the middle, there is Sean Carter, and on the right is James Wilson. These 3 OCS Level 7 students were 10 years old and presented among corporations, academics, scientists, and engineers. The Black Panther newspaper describes the students' demonstration of a 3.5-foot, 3-stage sewage treatment plant simulation. Their science teachers, James Abron, emphasized to onlookers that students had designed and constructed the project independently after being taught about electricity, chemistry, hydraulics, air pressure, and mechanics at OCS as 10-year-olds. The students poured a solution of water, motor oil, ink, perfume, and dirt into the plant and described in detail each stage of filtration as the solution went through the plant, ending up as clear, drinkable water, which onlookers then drank. The paper describes professional scientists as, quote, visibly impressed, end quote, with the students' comprehension of their project and the end product of drinkable water. Beyond this article, an article announcing the conference and the Oakland Tribune, and photographs, very little was written, saved, or recorded about the presentation. I searched for weeks hoping to find anything else, like a program from the event, someone's conference notes, or a video of the presentation, but I couldn't find anything and felt very defeated. But I also thought about our academic conferences today and how sparse the documentation is for these. A lack of records about the students' presentations mirror what would likely happen at a regional conference today. However, these students are still alive, as are the teachers, and they can still tell their stories. In writing about the presentation, the Black Panther newspaper describes the presentation as a, quote, enviable opportunity, seeing in action the innovative teaching methods of the Oakland Community School, end quote. That is why this event is essential to include in the digital yearbook project, despite the current amount of information we have on it. That 10-year-olds felt empowered to present amongst professional scholars, scientists, and engineers, and awed them with their understanding, that they weren't just memorizing and reciting information, but applied their classroom education to a real-world project and were able to answer professionals' questions is illustrative of the OCS motto and value of teaching students how to think, not what to think. In this moment, we see something truly revolutionary about OCS. They created thinkers, not students, and empowered them to take on challenges in their community. We see them educating to liberate, as I hope to do one day. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bree Smiley. I am a second year in the Culture and Theory PhD program here at UC Irvine, and I am also a graduate fellow for the Black Panther Oakland Community School Research Cluster. I was tasked with researching the June 8th, 1977 graduation ceremony at the Oakland Community School, and more broadly about the Oakland Community School's 70 graduates. Going into this project, I hope to learn about the daily operations of the Oakland Community School, its history, and more about the Black Panther Party and its survival programs. I didn't really know what to expect just from the application, but I noticed that there was a huge emphasis on defining community education, which I thought was really interesting for a 10-week fellowship. And I realized that even though I had previous experience working on digital humanities projects before in undergrad, I had never worked on one of this scale before. And so with that being said, it was a lot of hard work, but I'm happy with what I could do to push the research further along. Now, as my time with the project comes to an end, what I expected to learn differed a bit from what I actually learned. While I did learn about the Oakland Community School and its philosophies, I also learned about the Oakland Community School as a place where graduates had a unique educational experience. I learned about what the Oakland Community School meant to its graduates and former students, how the graduates themselves were deeply impacted by their time at OCS, and that they were provided with not just a high quality education, but found themselves a part of a community dedicated to reframing education as we know it. So during my 10 weeks with the summer program, I learned more about digital humanities, archival sources, and databases, and the importance of oral histories, more than I'd ever hoped to learn, as well as gained experience in transcribing various interviews of those involved with the Black Panther Party's survival programs. Most importantly, I learned what it means to do research that is both independent and collaborative. This summer, I went through archival sources and materials, got my hands dirty, so to speak, and got experience with oral history interviews and learned just how much effort and work goes into compiling a database, especially a living one. And so with that being said, I would like others to know that this kind of research was in no way easy. There were times where I was frustrated at the lack of sources or not being able to answer specific questions. And sometimes I found myself overwhelmed by the data I had to collect and comb through. The summer taught me to be patient with myself and with the archives. It also taught me to put myself in the shoes of staff, students, and party members who made the Oakland Community School what it was. Briefly, I'll mention some of the unique traits of the graduation ceremonies and performances within the Oakland Community School. Graduations usually included something called a pantomime. And this is where the graduates or students would reenact their experiences throughout the school year. The graduation ceremonies usually entailed guest speakers, a narrator, a collective reflection on the school or themes the school had in place for the school year. Music performed sometimes by the graduates, and there was also the reading of poetry, and sometimes even a martial arts performance or skit. The ceremonies would close with children from lower levels in the school joining the graduates on stage to sing, and finally with a song performed by the graduates themselves. At the end of the ceremonies, the students would be awarded with the graduation certificates, and sometimes parents were even awarded the Parent of the Year award. And so the OCS hosted performances and plays, mostly African inspired, or plays that told of current events or historical retellings in a way that showcased the children's knowledge of their culture and history, as well as the rigor of the OCS curriculum and the radical imagining of what education could and should look like. The 1977 graduation had 11 graduates. Girls were dressed in white dresses while boys were dressed in tan suits. During this ceremony, the graduates recited a poem reflecting on how love and concern at OCS contributed to their individual growth and collective development. Here, the students began to pantomime with the narrator their previous experiences and memories of the school year. Along with graduates, there's a little wheel to turn it in my heart, and love is the answer. The graduates by themselves sing their last song, We Can Do Anything, which is featured here in the slide, which was also a song that was featured at other graduation ceremonies. And so some of the highlights of the 1976 to 1977 school year included a visit to the school by Governor Jerry Brown and students' performances entitled A Brighter Tomorrow, Come Let's Be Friends, and a performance written and staged by the students themselves called Remembering Our Roots. So these performances in some way or the other made mention of Black struggle, the histories of colonialism, slavery, and Jim Crow. They often featured Azanian songs and dances, as well as the reciting of poetry. Researching this event was fun because of the detailed descriptions of graduation ceremonies, as well as finding out the effort that went into the children's performances for various programs, including graduation throughout the school year. Learning about how the children wrote and performed their own plays and poems was incredibly impressive and a testament to how OCS granted the youth in their community so many opportunities to express themselves as well as challenge themselves academically. The OCS left a lasting impression on its students even after they graduated. My experience researching this event had ebbs and flows, of course, but it got me thinking about the importance of community, education, and memory, how a child feels in the present education system follows them for the rest of their life. If they are treated with kindness, then they persevere. If they are deemed uneducable, then they do not believe in themselves. Though my own research as a PhD student varies greatly from the work that I did this summer, I think that it was beneficial as a person who will also go on to educate others in the future and in the near future. The kindness of the OCS school is something that I strive to incorporate in my pedagogy. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kay Regalado. I'm an undergrad student, and I'm currently a literary journalism and film and media studies double major at UCI. I'm going to be coming into my third or junior year. And going into college, I had a pretty fuzzy understanding of what research really was. In my first few years at UCI, I got involved in work with archives and oral histories, things that I guess could be considered research. I never really knew what research was, but it was something I had been wanting to try out for a while, just to see if I was interested in it. And working with community archives and oral histories, I loved it and it was great for me. And I really wanted to do more. Supporting and uplifting communities through helping them tell stories in the past was fantastic. And I wanted to continue in this work to help contribute to something that to me felt meaningful and like really great work to do. And that's what inspired me to apply to be an OCS fellow. And throughout the project, I really felt as if I did contribute to something greater, and that was great, of course. But along the way, I learned so much, in a technical sense. I learned about things I never thought I would touch or things I knew nothing about. Various information collecting platforms, digital humanities, how to navigate historical research in databases and archives, looking through B-roll. But more importantly, I learned about Oakland Community School. It was revolutionary education that was able to do what public education really just often lacked in. OCS sought to do more for their students in really just all facets of their education and the lives of their students. And that was something that moved me and expanded my mind in just a way I couldn't have expected. So about what you should know about this, well, for one, research, for how I now understand it, is really tough. It's not too surprising, but it is just a lot of searching. You won't always know for sure what you're looking for, and you'll be working with various kinds of data and databases. It can really just, honestly, it can make your head swim. But there's a lot of meticulous details you normally don't think about, a lot of organization that needs to be done. And it's not always pretty. In fact, it rarely is. It's a lot of stumbling around in the dark, but what keeps me going in these kinds of projects is what I feel like I'm contributing to. Research is ultimately just that, stumbling around in the dark until you find something, hopefully something new, interesting, or innovating. And from there, sharing or using that new content to make something, something also new, but using it in a way that is accessible and or easier to understand. But this work has also, to me, reinforced the importance of archives and storytelling. Storytelling is something I'm personally very passionate about, but I'm passionate about it because it keeps things alive and allows for something that might not physically be there to have impact. And I think that's what we're trying to do as a cohort with OCS. But OCS's story also taught me that there's also something really important about the lack of information and the lack of stories too. OCS isn't something that's well known. I didn't know about it before this project, but the thing is that doesn't change how important that it is. There's a lot of stories in the world that have yet to be told. And here in this project, we're trying to tell OCS's story. And through sharing it, we hope to make the world a better place. And so the event I did research on was the Sacramento Award visit, which took place on August 18th, 1977. The award, shown above the center photo, was accepted at the California State Capitol. At the event, several people involved in the Black Panther Party were present, including Huey Newton, Elaine Brown, Erica Huggins, along with 12 OCS students that attended the school at the time. The photo in the center is the award itself, reading off some of the achievements of the party in serving their community and their students. Some phrases in the award read that OCS, and I quote, produced the highest level of scholastic achievement, concretely defied the myth of the uneducable child, quote, motivated students with diversified and well-rounded interests, and that OCS, quote, provided 3 meals a day, clothing, full medical care at low or no cost. In the photo on the right, we can see that many people were present at the awarding itself. Elaine Brown is shown holding the award, and Huey Newton and Eric Huggins, they all spoke during the event. The 12 OCS students are also present in many of the photos we collected. This shows the type of learning students might have gotten as students in OCS, as they got field trips to places that were politically relevant, and this use of hands-on knowledge that was relevant to their lives and future learning. But as pictured on the left, 10 years prior to the awarding, on May 2nd, 1967, the Black Panther Party, armed with guns, went to the California Capitol, the same place where this awarding was held, to protest a gun control bill. As a result, in 1967, several Black Panther Party members were arrested on that day. It's a huge contrast to the award ceremony I'm talking about today, which took place just 10 years later. It's a huge change. Concerning the event, Huey Newton stated that the party's basic goals haven't changed. But according to what I've researched, many newspapers took note of how the party had progressed, going from the event that took place years ago to now receiving an award for their efforts in building services to better serve their communities. But the fact that these newspapers put such emphasis on this event in comparison to the one that took place 10 years ago also showed that newspapers, and by extension, the media in general, were still pretty skeptical of the Black Panther Party. And a lot of this skepticism might partly be the reason as to why OCS has gone unnoticed throughout the years, the lack of storytelling, as I mentioned. This idea that the Black Panther Party was militant, dangerous, seemed to cancel out what good and truly revolutionary things the Black Panther Party had achieved. And during this internship, we also covered the Black Panther Party survival programs, like free breakfast programs, which were built to serve the community. But in this program, we're trying to fight this expectation that the party is dangerous and militant, and we're hoping to make OCS be noticed and be truly recognized for what it was, as revolutionary great work. We're going beyond this award, and we seek to amplify the story of OCS louder for the sake of all students and really education as a whole. While the public school system is often found to be lacking, OCS didn't lack, and we're trying to acknowledge the community and our community's future. Thank you.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Ali, senior undergrad student at UCI, double majoring in English and criminology. I think over the course of the fellowship, being an undergrad research fellow, I've learned and grown a lot. I think one of the big things for me was to broaden my horizons, and that's something that's always appealed to me, was to really understand people and the world. For my expectations, I knew that I would be learning about the Oakland Community School and the Black Panther Party. And in addition to that, I expected that I'd be working towards a project. Since I think that was listed on the flyer that I applied, they mentioned a digitized archive and documentary and a yearbook project. I knew that I'd be really far from my comfort zone, but that has always come with its list of benefits and is, in my opinion, conducive to growth. One of the big things that I struggled a lot with was just grappling with the fear of not being able to contribute at all. That's something that I kept thinking about during like the interview process, was the fact that I didn't know a lot about the topic. But then going forward to meeting everyone, my fears were kind of slowly dispelled. So it's really been a really collaborative environment, and I think we've really formed a community. I learned quite a lot over the course of these weeks, understanding what research means to me, navigating through digital humanities, and also learning how to use a wide variety of apps. Things like Zotero for compiling a database of research content, Pixieset for photos, Airtable for collecting and viewing data in the tables, and Otter AI so that we can transcribe and sift through important points in interviews, just to name a few. I've also grown to appreciate the impacts of historical work and what OCS means and its lasting impacts and lessons, such as the 10-point program and survival programs that were in there. Another thought I had was the comparisons made to traditional schooling, which I find to be a very interesting perspective. So it became clear to me that its legacy had a lot to offer, and there was a clear human factor, especially when I went through the video clips and interviews. So all of this has made me realize that this is kind of truly a race against time, to collect these pieces, things like oral history and how it fades with time. I've also grown to improve on my collaborative skills and kind of improve on speaking to some capacity. I still have some trouble, but slowly I'm getting over the fear of sounding just like a complete mess. And I think all of the fellows and Angela and our guests have always been so kind. When it comes to the takeaways, what you should know, I think it's important to really value history and how it comes in all shapes and forms, like oral history, which means things like interviews. Another big thing would be to be open to different interpretations, good and bad, and also to be open to learning about new information as well. One big thing that I couldn't emphasize enough would be to be accepting of difficulties and being forgiving to both yourself and to others. Sometimes you might fall behind or someone else might have troubles. And I found myself frustrated at the lack of information sometimes as well. For my digital yearbook project, I was given the OCLC Radiothon that happened on August 21st of 1977. So the event itself was a co-sponsored fundraiser event between the OCLC, the Oakland Community Learning Center, and KRE Radio. It was held at the OCLC, and it was broadcasted on KRE Radio from noon to 10 p.m. And a lot of musicians appeared, and the radiothon itself was free with low-cost booths for things like food. Alongside that, the Bay Area community leaders also came in support. So by the end of the radiothon, they raised over $10,000, all of it being put towards the community service programs that OCLC provided. Personally, I was really happy to hear that they were able to raise so much money on the single event. And when you think about inflation of that period, put this into the inflation calculator, it'd be nearly $50,000. So I think that shows the amount of love the community had for each other, and overall, I found it really amazing to hear. Of course, although the information was really sparse, mainly from just photos, it's kind of undeniable that the money put towards it served the community in a really great way, even if it was kind of in the background. It was interesting to research this event itself, and I felt like I started with like a box of puzzles, and sometimes not even that. You start with little or nothing, and you have to find pieces along the way. Of course, I was given a bit of direction as to what known materials existed, like the newspapers and certain photo sets, but it still took a lot of time to find the rest of the information. And you have to do a lot of detective work to find and glue pieces together. And sometimes it might not truly be related. So one of the setbacks I had was almost adding information about a different radiothon they held a previous year. So while there is little information to work with for the radiothon event, I'm still happy with being able to preserve and archive what little we have and still have a good overview of what happened that day. So when it comes to my design, I thought I'd mention a little bit. I wanted it to flow like a timeline should. So although I can't pinpoint what time of day each photo was taken, I wanted to create a natural flow. So the first picture kind of shows the stage a little bit. Someone's on there performing, but the audience isn't the main focus, and I think it's a good idea to set it up. The second photo, I want to put more emphasis on the large audience and how the community, because obviously that's what it's all about here, they all come together. So it's like the closest way to show life in the event with what little information that we have. And the last one was kind of more into the night, and I think it closes out the set of photos really nicely with another performance act. I wanted to leave off with mentioning that a few days ago, I also had like a breakthrough finding out some of the artists who performed for another article, which mentioned Obeya, Vitamin E, Roger Glenn Salsa Band, Mel Martin, Merle Saunders, and more. So knowing that, I think it could be possible to have some background music for presenting this event if it was on a web page. So I think it was amazing to see if there are bits and pieces of information just floating about out there. And for me, it really solidified the concept of trusting the process because I could have just stopped digging just there, but because I looked more, I found more information. My big takeaway when I look at OCS, both for my event and seeing the massive success of the fundraiser, and from what the school represented, was really what it meant to those in the community. I think one big piece for me after finishing the event was to think about the idea of teaching, come back to the idea of teaching students how to think and not what to think. This kind of alternative idea of going about schooling made me wonder about how our education system functions today, what potential improvements could be made, and how it differs. So overall, it's been like a really great experience. I'm really glad that I got to work with everyone in the research clusters and bounce ideas off of each other and working on the digital yearbook project. And I think that's all. So thank you.
Thank you all for sharing those personal and professional experiences with us. Right now is when we transition to the audience to see what their questions are for each of you. And while we're waiting for the audience to use the Q&A feature to ask questions, I want to know from each of you briefly what your most memorable experience was from this summer, just one thing that's memorable. And I guess we can go in the same order: Kasaya, then Bree, then Kay, then Ali.
Yeah, I can start. I would say my most memorable experience would probably be being able to facilitate the discussion with Erica Huggins. I think that's a once in a lifetime opportunity, and I also was really nervous going into it, but I had a really good time doing it. So I'm very grateful to be able to have had that opportunity.
I would say my most memorable experience was probably leading seminar and doing my own presentation on a topic. And it was just sort of really cool to get everyone's perspectives, but also to have it be based on sort of the work that we were doing, which seemed so personal, but it also is like blurring into like our research interests or our personal sort of memories and experiences as people in K through 12. So yeah, I think that was my most memorable and funnest.
And I think as for me, I guess this is something a little more personal, but I think there was one point when I was just looking through B-roll of of films that we had, or not films, but archival video that we were looking at. And that's something I'd never done before. And I think it was just really impactful to see it in its rawest form, as in like, you know, it wasn't cold, it wasn't changed or altered in any way. So it was just really interesting to look through. And I think it was really interesting to look at and identify what was most interesting to me. So yeah.
I think for me, it was actually the most recent thing was to find like some of the artists who performed in my event. I think for me, for the longest time, I thought like there's only so much information out there, and the articles I kept finding only said the same things. They talk about the event, they talk about how much money was made, they talk about where the money might be going. But after I did some more digging and looking for some more sources, I was able to find the actual names essentially of the artists themselves. I thought that really kind of gave back life to the event, because there is just so many photos, there are articles here and there, but there was like no idea of what it would have sounded like. And it's like, when you think about a radiothon, the whole point of it is to be able to like hear it essentially. So that was like the most impactful for me.
Thank you all for those memories. I'd like to invite each of the interns to stay on screen for the audience Q&A. We do have our first question in from Professor Wu. Professor Wu says, since you all did research on 1976 to 77, did you learn from each other's research? What were some unexpected discoveries that benefited others? And anyone can answer that.
I'd say for my research, it wasn't like directly always linked to the rest of the interns events. But I did see, I think, pieces for Kay's event actually when I was looking for the radiothon. And I just thought it was interesting to see that there were like kind of traces of that event when I looked through my information as well. So it's like, it's all connected to me.
I would say for me, since I was sort of looking very closely at the graduations and sifting through photos, like I know Kasaya's research like is more so involved with the women in the BPP, but I was always seeing pictures of Erica Huggins or like Erica was always there. No matter what batch I was looking through, there were always pictures of her. And so it just made me think about like the close-knitness between the children and Erica. And so, yeah.
I think I can also add something. I did the Sacramento award visit, and I think even though the award on its own is pretty amazing, I think it was important for me to not look at that in a vacuum. The award visit wasn't just an award that just happened. It was, you know, a lead up of various events that happened throughout the years. And even, you know, that included all the events that happened before this, you know, ones that the other fellows did cover, but just things before that as well. And I think, yeah, it was important to acknowledge that it was a community effort, and all those things really led up to what really led up to that award. And it wasn't just one thing that was all on its own. And I think it was important for me to think beyond that vacuum of it's just an award.
Kasaya, did you have anything to add?
Not really. I think in coming up with how to present this research, I was thinking a lot about how the different events work together, but in actually conducting the research, a lot of the stuff I was looking at was kind of specific to my event, rather than inclusive of all of our events. So yeah.
When I saw the question, one of the things I thought about was how one of the first transcription projects you worked on was a collective transcript of Amber Landis Reedy's interview. Amber was a student that year. Amber went to that 1977 awards event with Huey Newton, and she also appeared in some of the other videos that you watched. And so what was that experience like? And one of you can answer, everyone doesn't need to answer, working on that same oral history transcript.
I'll start. I really enjoyed Amber's interview. I learned a lot about OCS from listening to her, and also getting to see her react to different photographs that you showed. Being able to work on it collectively, I think, was really helpful, because if there were bits that I didn't catch, someone else could catch them. And then our discussion the following week, where we all got to talk about sort of what clips we thought were most important and why, was really interesting to see how everyone picked up different things.
We have another question from Professor Tiffany Willoughby-Herrard, and it's a two-parter. How would you say your historical consciousness has changed having worked in this particular archive? What do you now think about the work of caring for historical memory? So the first one is, how would you say your historical consciousness has changed having worked in the OCS archival material?
I guess I'll start. I think for me, in terms of working with this particular archive, it reiterates, or I guess emphasizes to me, overall, just like how historically, how things are so multifaceted. It's easy to kind of get like into just like a textbook and just think like history is just all this one side. And it's all presented to you. It's like kind of in a way presented to you like facts sometimes. But really there's so much more information out there. And you really have to, I think for yourself and look for information on your own as well. Besides just getting that kind of overview. As for how I would care about historical memory in the future, I think it's made me think about how they come in all kinds of mediums, and it's like it's not just a matter of getting documents. There are things like oral history that are involved, and that's something that I didn't really think about when I thought of history, because all I ever saw were just historical documents, and that just made me realize how much of that information has been lost because people didn't document it in the past. So if I were to continue historical work, I would be sure to like really think about how many different types of forms that could come in.
And does anyone want to tackle the second question, which is, what do you now think about the work of caring for historical memory?
I can say something on that. It's very difficult and very important work to do. I think that something interesting in the question is historical memory versus historical fact, and sort of how valuable telling this story is for like the individual people that lived it, especially since they're alive to experience it. I think that it's a lot more complex and meaningful than just like Googling up a newspaper. Especially since these people are living, we can see, their reaction to these bits of history that they had forgotten or that they had been looking for and unable to find. So I think that it's very taxing work, but very important and meaningful work that impacts people beyond, building an archive for researchers to access.
I would also like to just quickly add that there's a level of intimacy when you specifically, I'm thinking about Angela's interview of Amber, Angela's interview of like Fred Moorhead, and just I'm thinking about how there's like this level of like listening, right? Like you let people talk and you just sort of like hear them. And so I think that to answer like, what do you now think about the work of caring for historical memory? Yes, it is difficult, but I also think there's like this almost spiritual sort of element to it, that this is a bit bigger than, you know, writing something down so it can be in notes or whatever. It's about the experience.
Thank you. We have another question from Crystal Trivet. How do you plan to apply what you learned about BPPOCS or the skills you used for your projects to your academic or career goals?
I feel like I'm talking a lot, but no one's talking. So I really was inspired by the work that was done in OCS, especially, as I said earlier, in trying to figure out my relationship to both my community and to the world of academia and education. And so I think some of the ways that these people thought about thinking, not thought about teaching, are very valuable to me. And I believe that I'll be carrying that into my career and academic goals, as well as some of the more like tactile skills we learned, such as transcription, how to manage organizing oral histories, or various digital humanities programs that we have access to as UCI students.
I think in terms of what I learned about the OCS, it's made me think about how our education system is run. That's one of the big things that I kept thinking about. And it's inspiring to see the kind of alternative way that they ran it with levels as opposed to normal grades. I can't help but feel critical about our system right now, alongside the whole idea of tracking, which is like the placement into remedial, normal, or advanced classes, and how that kind of puts certain people at a disadvantage. But I think that just gives me a lot more to think about. And in terms of my skills, I think being comfortable with looking through archives, searching through the kind of material, which has not been my strong suit for like the longest time. Talking in front of people, which is also not my strong suit, the fear of sounding like a mess, but also collaborating with everyone. So those are things that would stick with me forever, essentially.
Okay, would you like to add anything to this one before we move to the next question?
Yes, I can add something. Sort of what Ali was thinking. I think this project definitely got me thinking about how learning happens, I guess. Just the fact that, I mean, of course, to combine with the fact that OCS was a revolutionary educational institution, I mean, it was something that tried to think about learning in a different way than we usually do in public schools. And I think that's something I'll carry with me all throughout. I think the ways we try to, you know, get people to learn things today in both public schools and colleges and everywhere. I think we assume that there's a certain way that it needs to be done. And I think I'll continue to think about how the complexities of learning are just as complex as the histories that we've covered in OCS, in essence.
I'll go last and just briefly add that I think that my experience with this fellowship has definitely built my confidence in terms of thinking about digital humanities or thinking about historical research, and just, you know, it was very different than what I sort of expected. And, you know, it felt like I was I was like very much outside of academia doing something that was really, again, just really intimate and really important and really something that was a bit of a new experience for me. I'm so used to sort of like digging through books or like reading theories and writing, but it was really interesting to sort of go into archives, match names with faces, and listen to interviews. And so I think these skills sort of offered a new way for me to personally think about research and methodologies as well.
Thank you. And I'd like to actually jump in and say this is the second summer that I've had an opportunity to work with UCI student interns. And last year we had a much larger group. We had 10, we had 8 undergraduates and 2 graduate students. This year, it was much more, to use Bree's word, intimate group. And I discovered, I had the opportunity to figure out how to design projects that would allow the students to delve deeper into particular subject matter. And I was able to just watch how each developed in terms of their knowledge and awareness of the history, but also watching their skill sets and their different interests. And so I would sometimes shape assignments along the way to try and meet the interest level of the students. So I had an amazing time. I always learn a lot working with the interns, and I thank you for all of your time. And so we're coming to the end of our time here, but before we end, I wanted to ask Kasaya, since one of the questions was about how this is going to apply to your future work that you do, you actually will continue your own independent research projects around women in the Black Panther Party this year. And I just want you to spend a minute sharing with us about an upcoming event that you help put together and find co-sponsors for, and also how it connects to the other several projects you have proposed for the year.
Okay, so this upcoming October, October 18th at UCI, we'll be having a book panel as well as a book signing reception on campus from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. In Humanities Gateway. Erica Huggan and Stephen James have put together a photojournalism book about women in the Black Panther Party called Comrade Sisters, which is coming out on October 10th. And so as part of their book tour, they'll be coming to UCI. We will also be having 2 other Panther women on the panel. So we'll get to learn about their experiences. And this connects to some of the work that I'll be doing with Angela this upcoming year as I start to look at some of the poetry projects that the Black Panther women did and create a digital humanities project about them. Yeah. Is there anything that I missed, Angela?
No, that's it. But my understanding is that you will be presenting those research results for your different projects, perhaps in the spring as part of the CPI grant initiative.
Right. Yes, I will be doing that. So a lot of the women wrote poetry, and I'm going to be collecting it, but also analyzing it to relate it to their work in the party. And that's being funded through the Consortium for Power and Identity, who's also helping fund this book tour event. And so in the spring, they're going to have all of the projects that they've funded be presented at UCI.
And at this point, I would like to turn things back over to Crystal.
Well, I cannot believe the summer is coming to a close. It has been amazing. It has been great to get to know each and every one of you, and I'm really excited about your projects. I would like to extend gratitude to you all for choosing to be a part of this research cluster. And as always, I thank Angela for all that she does to contribute to this opportunity for UCI and for the students. And to you, the audience, thank you for joining us. Please do stay in contact with us because there's always more to come from BPOCS Research Cluster.